Good morning, everyone. This is Mark Molina, CEO of Molina Leadership and Business Development Solutions. Today, we have with us the new city manager of Springfield, Oregon, Nancy Newton. We're very excited to have a prolonged conversation with her and learn a little bit more about her. And I'm going to begin this morning by reading her biography. Nancy is a native Oregonian. She has over 20 years in public sector experience. Nancy spent her childhood on a farm in Corbett, Oregon, as the youngest of 5 children. In addition to growing hay, the farm had cows, chickens, horses, and some ornery geese. Every summer, the family went to the Oregon State Fair to show their cattle. Her first job was working in her father's optometry office as a receptionist. It was a small family business where her mother, brother, and sister also worked. Working for a small business helped shape Nancy's professional career in public service as she learned about working with the public to give them good value with great customer service. Nancy's father sold his practice and retired at the age of 89. Amazing. Nancy worked in the nonprofit sector in her 20s and enjoyed the interaction between board members, volunteers, the community, and staff. She transitioned this experience to working for Clackamas County, Oregon, as staff to the local Commission on Children and Families, where she worked to keep kids 0 to 18 out of the juvenile justice system. While working for Clackamas County, Nancy was promoted several times, eventually serving as deputy county administrator and interim county administrator. She spent 17 years at Clackamas County and went to Sacramento County to expand her career in public service. Although Nancy enjoyed working in California, she still missed her home state. When the opportunity for the city manager position opened in Springfield, she applied and was thrilled when offered the city manager position. While she was working full-time, Nancy obtained her bachelor's degree in management and organizational leadership from George Fox University and her executive master of public administration from Portland State University. Nancy is excited to work for Springfield and is thankful to the mayor and city council for selecting her as the next city manager. She has already purchased a home in Springfield and is looking forward to being engaged in the community. Nancy, welcome. Thank you for being here today. I know you're very busy, so I greatly appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Mark.
You're more than welcome. And what I like to do and what I like to ask people, tell me something about you that is not on this bio.
Okay, well, a little factoid about me. I'm also, I'm also a musician. I started playing the piano when I was growing up, and then I switched to voice when I was in college, and I enjoy it a lot. I say, musician asterisk because there are so many talented musicians around the area, and so it's something I enjoy just for fun. Certainly not my day job, but I enjoy it a lot. So I especially enjoy jazz.
Oh, very good. Do you have a piano at home? Do you practice singing at home with your family?
I like to sing. Actually, it's funny. I sing a lot to my dog. He's my most captive audience, and he likes it. It calms him down. He's a puppy. He's about a year and a half, and I don't have a piano now. When I did have a piano in Oregon, I donated it to a senior center. They needed it more than I did, and I was moving to California, so I didn't want to move a piano down with me. But it's something I want to get back in. Probably get a keyboard, a little bit more portable.
Sure. Yeah, we have a baby grand. My wife is classically trained, and she's gifted pianist, and we do a little bit of singing ourselves. So I enjoy what music adds to us and others in the process of sharing it. So, you've been on the job how long now?
It'll be 3 months on the 20th of this month. It just feels like it's gone by crazy fast.
You've come into a new position in our city in the midst of a pandemic. What were some of your first thoughts upon your arrival into the setting and the conditions in which you were forced to arrive?
My first thoughts were, well, really, I was very impressed with how rapidly Springfield responded to the pandemic and were able to get staff out telecommuting. I think that was, I was impressed with the efficiency that happened, and how well coordinated they were at the time. When I came on, there were daily check-ins with the executive team about COVID and what they were doing with their planning. And so I was very impressed with the efficiency and the commitment to get things done when I came on from the staff. Excuse me, I'm taking a little sip here. You'll have to forgive me. I have allergies, and they're just kicking back. And now that I'm back to Oregon, I'm getting back into my big seasonal allergies. The next thing I thought was, we really had to be flexible and responsive to what was coming up. We didn't know, obviously, we still don't know how long this pandemic will be with us. So my first thought was, of course, the safety of the employees, and of course, being able to provide great service still to our customers. And what did that look like? I was really surprised, and I continue to be impressed with the creativity of the staff to think of ways that we can serve the public in a closed capacity with City Hall.
Now, what attracted you? I mean, I love your bio, I love your story, family farm, the amazing experiences one would have in that kind of setting. Your father's a businessman, and you guys work together as a family. It formed and fashioned who you are personally and professionally. And you have this impressive resume of significant work. So, what attracted you to the city manager position at Springfield? What was the scope of work, the professional portion of it that drew you?
I need to backtrack a little bit to answer that question, because when I was looking at this position when I was working in Sacramento County. And I need to talk a little bit about Sacramento, because that plays into why I came back to Oregon, and why Springfield was very attractive to me. So I was working in Sacramento County for a very large county, $4.4 billion budget, over 12,000 employees. And it was a very interesting job, and I was number 2 in that organization. So I handled all the mostly operational things, while the the chief executive officer dealt primarily with the elected officials. I did more of the day-to-day things. But I really missed the type of interaction that I had when I was working in Clackamas County, and really out in the community more, working with Sacramento is a very large organization. It's also kind of hierarchical in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I dealt primarily with department directors, some staff, but it was pretty limited, because it's just such a big organization. You can't really spread yourself as much as you would like to. And counties are different. They do their business differently than cities. It's a little bit more removed. For instance, they have their meetings during the day. The elected officials, that is their job. That's their full-time job. So there's not as much interaction with the community, and I missed that. At the same time, I was working on the 2020 census and getting the word out to our hard to reach, hard to count communities. And I was really loving the interaction I was having with the nonprofits there, and the trusted messengers in the different communities. And I was thinking, that's kind of where my roots started when I was working for the Commission on Children and Families. And I really realized how much I missed that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw the advertisement for Springfield, I thought, this is a city manager where I'll be interacting with the community and with the elected officials and with the staff a lot more than I am now. And I liked the smaller size. I felt like I would be able to have more of a personal impact with people,
Mm-hmm.
rather than be so policy and wonky all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just the community itself. Springfield is such a beautiful area, for one, and I was familiar with that, but obviously the way it was written, and some of the processes that went into this, there were, it was a recruitment before that didn't pan out, and then there was the next recruitment. And I thought, this is a community that really is invested in who their city manager is going to be, and this is a council that isn't going to settle, and they want the right person, and I think I could be that person.
Mm-hmm.
and just the values of the city and the way that people just kind of roll up their sleeves and get in there and get things done is very much my personality. And I didn't want to kind of be up in an ivory tower. I wanted to be with the community and working alongside the staff. So that's why I applied for Springfield. And as I progressed through the process and got to know more of the staff and more of the community, I felt better and better about it. Like, this really feels like a good fit. The people here have a lot of pride in who they are, and they really want to keep their sense of community together. And I was so impressed with how friendly everybody was, but also just really a lot of talented people in this community
Mm-hmm.
that are very passionate about living here and very involved in the community. And so that's what really attracted me to Springfield.
Well, reading your bio and listening to the explanation you have just given, it all makes sense as formulated position and perspective on interaction and people working in your father's business, the family farm, all that. You can't accomplish those things without working well with others.
Right.
Now, on a side note, did you see any civic activity on their part that spurned that in you, or was that just something you developed over time?
My mother, we were very active in our church. So that was something that I did all growing up. But my mom in particular was very active in helping with nonprofits and doing volunteer activities. She instilled with my sister and I that we would always be helping other people. Even at the very end of her life, when she was in her 80s, she was involved in the Blanket Project in Portland,
Mhm.
and that's a nonprofit that it's just a very simple thing that they do. They go and they give blankets to people that are unhoused,
Mhm.
and just the very and a kind touch with a blanket and some personal necessities. That was something that she was involved with, even well into her 80s. So that I think that commitment to volunteering and knowing that we have a responsibility to our communities and to our really to our fellow humans on this planet to be good to each other and to help each other when we can. I think part of that comes from living on a farm, and part of that comes from growing up in a rural community where when things happen, we relied on each other
Yes.
and we helped each other out. And that's the same type of attitude that I feel here in Springfield.
And I think probably learning to get along with some of them ornery geese was helpful.
Yes, although one of my favorite animals in the farm was actually a huge bull, and he was a big black Angus bull, and he would let me scratch his forehead between the fence, and he was very friendly with me.
Well, one of my duty assignments in the Army was at Fort Sam Houston, the original quadrangle, the original fort. And within that fort, they had all these live animals, and they had a lot of geese in there. And we ran all the ceremonies for dignitaries, UN officials, generals, and we had geese, and they were mean. So I
Jeremy.
completely comprehend that ornery geese comment. Now, what was some of your first impressions of the requirements of the position as you entered into the application process in the initial phases?
Well, my first impression was these were all things that I'd done before in my career. I felt very comfortable with the requirements of the position. It was just in a different setting and in a different way with different people. I knew that I had the skills and abilities to do the job, but what I didn't have and what I'm still learning is just the context behind things, the history, making the connections in the local community. Um, those are the types of things as coming new into a job that you just have to learn over time. And then coming in the middle of a pandemic makes it that much harder because obviously I'm not able to go and physically go out and meet people and go to the businesses and say hello to them and do a lot of things that I would really like to be doing. So that's been a hindrance, but it's not forever, and we're doing I think a lot of great workarounds like this interview today.
Yes, thank you. So we serve now officially on the Springfield Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors together.
Yes.
What other boards are you on that will help you learn more about the city and the community?
The last board that I was on the United Way in Sacramento, the capital region. I haven't joined any other boards yet. I'm trying to figure out what would be the best way to represent the city and also that I can fit into my schedule.
Hmm.
I'm looking at that. There's so many things that I'm interested in. That's the other part. I could go do something with the arts. I could do something, helping um, families and children. So for me, I'm still kind of looking around. My husband was very active in Rotary. That's something that I was thinking about doing as well. So I've spoken to a local Rotary club here in Springfield and enjoyed. Everybody's so great in Rotary, so that's another one I'm thinking about doing. So it's just a matter of um, where best to focus my energies.
Yeah, the reality is everything takes time
Yeah,
and everything requires some form of commitment. And when you say yes to something, you automatically are saying no to something else, and that's really important. Um, Silly question. Uh, what is the exact role? I mean, I knew Mike Kelly, I knew Gino Grimaldi, I knew Jeff Towery, I knew Cynthia Pappas. I know a lot of great people that have worked there at the city. What is the exact role of a city manager?
that's a really good question. A city manager is really the bridge between the elected body and the staff and the community.
Mhm.
So the elected body sets the policies and the goals for the city, and then it's the city manager's job to make sure that those things get done. That's a overly simplistic way of putting it, but obviously the city manager is not the exclusive way that that happens. We triage a lot of things. We
Mhm.
uh, look at the issue, figure out who needs to be involved, who else needs to come to the table, what types of decisions need to be made, what are the legal requirements that are at play, what are the policy implications of what's in front of us, and then we kind of triage what are the next steps in the process of getting those goals met. And there are obviously some short-term things that city managers work on, the day-to-day operational things, to the long-term planning of communities, projects that of the council that wants to do. So there's one of the great parts about being a city manager is never the same day to day. You
Mhm.
never know what you're going to walk into. So, um, but overall, it's making sure that we take care of the operational needs that so the city keeps moving, and that we take care of the HR issues as well, and maintain good relationships with our labor unions and our community, our businesses, and the council.
Now, were you the first woman city manager in the history of the city?
I believe so, permanently, yes. I mean, Mary Bridget Smith did a great job as
Yes.
city manager pro tem, but yes, I believe that I am.
Silly. To me, it's maybe not as a silly question, but it's an interesting question for me. Uh, how does it feel? What's the expectation maybe you might feel, or is there a particular weight you might be experiencing? Because whenever someone's a first of something, there can always be this silent expectation, maybe not on from or by others, but
Yeah.
just within ourselves.
Certainly that comes to play. But for me, it's more about I don't think about being a female city manager as much as I do think about who I am as a person,
Hmm.
and am I conveying my convictions, my morals, my integrity? Am I being true to that? And that's really the compass that I use that guides me. And if I'm being true to that, then my gender is kind of tertiary to that.
That's a compelling thought. I was in the Army for several years, and a couple of times I was in units that had female officers, female non-commissioned officers, and I just use the term female because it's military
Yeah,
expression, so
sure.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But
No, it's fine.
I met a lot of gifted, wonderful, talented military female leaders, and the greatest female leader in my life, or woman leader in my life, was my mom. And she's the one that sat on my bed with me every night and prayed with me, and always brought me back to that relationship with my faith and my and my mom. So, I understand that it can be challenging. So I know that the city went through an intensive search process. I know that you were not chosen because you were a woman. You were chosen because you were qualified. You were chosen because you met the criteria. You had the value system. You had the moral code that all the council and the mayor were looking for. I had wanted to come to one of the socials when they looked at all of you at the city hall, but unfortunately I had to rush my daughter to gymnastics that evening, so I didn't have time to do that too. But I just appreciate the effort, the energy, and the commitment of the mayor and the city council to zero in on the one person that was going to best represent Springfield, Oregon, and that, Nancy Newton, is you.
Thank you. It's something I take very seriously, if I can talk about that just for a minute, because I really feel that wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I'm representing the city in all of my decisions and all of my actions. And I'm always cognizant of that that I treat people with kindness, with respect, with dignity, not just because I believe it, but because I don't separate who I am from the city. I don't, when I leave my office, it's not like it flips off. I'm still the city manager, and I still want people to feel that our city is accessible to them, that
Mhm.
they will be heard, they will be cared for, that they matter. And when they come and talk to me, that that's what I want them to feel. And that's really important to me. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yes, ma'am. Help me paint a picture here for those who may not know. How many departments are there at the city of Springfield that you're ultimately responsible for?
I'm trying to do a mental count of who goes to our executive team. So there's about 12, 13 different departments. Um, and I'm responsible for all of them. I've delegated our public works. This actually started with Mary Bridget. She had the public works portion of the city kind of reporting to Neil Ladati.
Mhm.
And I think that was a good decision on her part, because it's hard to uh, do all of the departments at once and oversee all of that day to day, every day. I'm still involved with Public Works, and Neil and I work together on that. But it's also a good experience for Neil
Yes.
growing his career. And since coming to the city, one of the things I did was transition him from an interim assistant city manager to a permanent assistant city manager status. And I feel really good about that.
Very good. Yeah, he's been there a long time. He's a well thought of, highly credible, not just a representative of the city, but he's a thoughtful leader, and people really respect him. So that was a.
Yeah,
I'm glad he's there, and I'm glad you have him, and I'm
me
glad
too.
he has you to see that potential in him.
Yeah, I think we're a really good team together.
Hmm. Now, how many managers are you responsible for?
Well, about all of the managers that are in our executive team, for one. So basically, the city manager is responsible for all of the employees in the organization.
Yeah.
So, I'd have to go back and figure out how many managers in total that is. But I look at it from more department heads, because they do the actual work in their department, and I try to be the type of manager that gives them overview, insight, maybe some direction, but then really tries to get out of their way and let them do their job the best that they can. Um, so I think there's around. I should have looked this up before you. I should have anticipated this question. So there's probably, when I talk to the team, it's probably about 12 of us
Okay.
that that I'm responsible for.
And how many employees does the city have total?
Just about 400.
Well, it's good. Now, what is your role as city manager in regards to official communique and interaction with the unions?
Well, I don't do as many direct communication with union, although they do reach out to me when they have issues, and they're always free to do that. but I always want to use the appropriate processes, because there's certain ways that union negotiations and the way we communicate with unions that are formal structures that you have to follow. So I use our HR director for that, and he does a great job. But part of the processes that we do is, especially when you're in bargaining, you give the overall parameters of the bargaining process, and we work with HR and the board, and then the HR director goes through that process with the bargaining team.
Oh, okay. So there's a, and I think there's a lot of us that don't understand that. That's why I'm asking that question.
Mhm.
What does it look like when there is, we know there's the police union, we have the employee union, there's a lot of unions. What does the layman, someone in this community, if you could just expand on that process a little bit, because I think people that will hear this will say, I didn't know that.
Well, it's about, probably the most interactions that we have in a formal structure with unions is during the contract negotiation process.
Mhm.
And most union contracts are on a 3-year schedule. And in Sacramento, our unions were on 3-year contracts as well. And just as a side note, in Sacramento, I dealt with 39 different bargaining units. So I'll
Wow.
just let that sink in for a minute. 39. So coming to Springfield, it was a refreshing number, much more manageable. So when unions are responsible for ensuring that their employees are treated fairly and that the contract is being followed, and we as managers are accountable to that contract. And so when we are working with an employee and there might be issues with that employee performance wise, we always go to the contract and look to see what that says. And so there are very prescribed steps that you go through when working with employees, and they have the right to have a union representative with them when we're talking about performance issues. So it's all, what I say to managers is there's really everything you need to know is right there in the contract, and just simply follow that and follow Oregon labor law, and you should and treat people well and fairly, and
Mhm.
you shouldn't really have any real issues with the unions. I've been very impressed with our union leadership here. They have a really collaborative relationship with our human resources department. So most of the time, if you have that good give and take with your union leadership, it really helps kind of cut off a lot of things at the past before they get to more formal processes like a grievance or some sort of official action with the union. So I think when you have that line of communication open, that's important. So one of the things that I would like to do, and I have met with some of the members of the police officers union. I'd like to do more of that. It's just a matter of, setting up. It's just such weirdness in this, with COVID, meeting with people and setting up those relationships is just so weird. But so the formal process with unions is really more through the negotiation process, and then you follow the contract. And when you do negotiations, there are things that management wants, and there are things that the union wants, and then you try to come to agreements on what those could look like.
Now, I noticed in your bio you got your bachelor's and your master's while you were already working full time.
Yes.
So, in your professional development, and behind me is my bachelor's and my master's on the wall, which I'm 56 now, and I just finished 7 years of working at home online. I know how hard that is.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was going to start my doctorate right away, but I was like, I need a break because I was waking up between 2 and 3 in the morning, 7 days a week to stay caught up with the pace. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. As you developed now in your professional development phase, that how did you determine the education, the degrees that you have? How did that fit into what you were learning along your professional development?
Right. So that's a really good question. When I got my undergraduate degree, I was working in nonprofit, and I wanted something that would be a good kind of all-purpose degree, So went, and at the time, George Fox was just starting a new program for adult learners that was during the evenings and on weekends. And I thought, well, I can do this. So it was their management and organizational leadership program. And it was a great experience and enabled me to, because I put myself through school, I was probably, how old was I? I was 29 when I got my bachelor's degree. So my master's took longer, just like everybody else, you work through it. But I'm glad that I did it. With my master's degree, I was already working in public administration. I figured out that this was really something that I enjoyed and that I wanted to continue to do. And Portland State had set up their executive master of public administration. I had taken some public administration courses before, but I was really drawn to this program because you had to have at least 10 years of experience in a pretty high managerial role in public administration to even apply to go to the school.
Mhm.
So that kind of puts you in a cohort of people that are your peers,
Mhm.
and you learn from them, and you have a kind of shared experience of going through that process together. So the Hatfield School of Government at Portland State, I mean, no offense to VUO, I know they do a great job, but I was just so enormously impressed with them and their instructors and just their involvement with local government.
Now, what other types of training processes were you able to go through outside of your college degree through your positions?
I've done a lot of training through the International City County Management Association, or ICMA, and that's pretty much the trade association for people in our field. And I've done a lot of diversity level training as well. That's something that's really important to me. So it's just, for me, intellectual curiosity is really important. I always want to be learning. I always want to be growing. I always want to be expanding my mind and my knowledge base, not always in a formal academic setting. I read a lot. I enjoy looking at online classes and listening to podcasts and different things like that. So it's kind of even though I have the formal structure, I like to augment that with other things. And there's so many things online now that you can access, which are great. So I, like you, have thought about getting a doctorate, but I don't know if I have the stamina at my age now.
Yeah, it's definitely harder the older you get, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, knowing what you know, I mean, you've only been at the city 3 months, I understand, in the midst of a pandemic, so everything is kind of loopy. But
Yes.
as a leader, now you've had some significant achievements, significant academic achievement as well. What type of training programs might you like to offer to employees or management there, or direct them towards?
There's so many things that we can offer that um, I have so many ideas of what I'd like to bring to the city. It's just time and resources and money, which are, hard to scrounge up sometimes. But for me, I would like to start a more formalized diversity training with the city. We have a very involved diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, and they do a fabulous job, but I would like to have a more formal structure around that. Um, and that's something that is important to me personally, but I think it would benefit our employees and our community. I'd also like to do a more, look at more, for lack of a better word, mentoring with our city staff, so that some of the more seasoned employees can help people that are starting their career, and giving them advice on how to really grow their career, grow themselves as professionals, just kind of matching people up. I haven't this is a I haven't even talked to our HR director about this one yet. It's just been kind of germinating in my mind, but it's something that I'd like to see us do when we can get back to more face-to-face interactions.
Hmm. Well, when I was in the Army, a lot of people don't know that leaders are responsible for counseling their soldiers in writing, for professional and personal development, minimum once a month. And we couldn't even once a month you had a chance to get, when you got paid, to leave early for the day to go pay your bills and stuff. Leaders couldn't even leave until they ensured everyone had been properly counseled within the established guidelines. And I say that to say to you that when you mention the word mentoring, I find that very exciting, because I think much of the civilian world doesn't understand the power of their role in mentoring employees, the power of mentoring their developing leaders, and how that creates that spirit of the corps. The morale increases. It increases viability for succession of command. How the organization can move forward in a case of emergency. So I really find that exciting, that that's your thought process.
Mentoring is very important to me. I had a great mentor, and it wasn't even a formal process. It was just somebody that I worked with that kind of inspired me throughout my career, and somebody that I could call and talk to for advice and things like that. So, and I've been a mentor for people in organizationally and also through Portland State. So I was a mentor in Clackamas County for employees there, but also I've been a mentor for students that are navigating the master's program and kind of wondering, how do I apply my career in public administration, and where do I want to go, and what do I want to do with this? Because there are so many things that you can do. So that was a lot of fun for me to do as well. And then I would do some co-teaching with one of the instructors at Portland State, and I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, that's really significant. That's very encouraging as well as inspiring to hear your perspective on that, because leadership is the most important commodity any of us have to offer, to give, and also to learn and to increase that capacity. Now, you've been there 3 months, crazy time, pandemic. Any idea at this point, maybe a premature question, what type of budget shortfalls, if any, the city's looking at?
Oh, I know that there will be a shortfall. I mean, we'll have probably a better idea of that in the fall. Because and the reason why I say that is because it will take some time for what's happening with the pandemic to kind of matriculate its way through the organization and the community. But I think some of the things that we'll see, one of the biggest sources of income with the city is property taxes. So, with Oregon's property tax structure, we may not see that hit for a while, but we may see some overall declining in growth with development and construction, and with this pandemic. So far, our development counter has been still pretty active, so I find that to be an encouraging sign. But we'll just have to wait and see. I'm really concerned about some of the social services, and typically cities don't offer social service programs. That's normally a responsibility of counties and state. I know that Springfield has made the decision to um, augment some of the programs that help people here in our local community, things like Cahoots. And I think that's a great program.
Yes.
I I'm concerned about people that will be losing their jobs, perhaps losing their homes, um, in the long term, and what that impact will have on our community, not just for our city, but just throughout the county, throughout the state. I am concerned about that.
Well, my wife and I were here in 2008 post housing market crash, and I lost my job in the midst of that. She was in her second year of law school, and there were no jobs. The six largest employers closed their doors. That the ripple effect of all the contractors that were going bankrupt, that were just we were losing everything. Everything. It was really really bad. And we lost our home. We would have been homeless had not a friend had a friend of ours not taken us in when he did. When him and his family did, I'll always be grateful for that, beyond my capacity to express in words. And so, this time in this pandemic, now that she's an attorney now, has her own law practice, um, most of her clients have been unemployed.
Yeah.
And if it was not for the federal PPP program, we'd lost everything again.
Mm.
So we know it's real. We know it's having a dramatic impact on people's lives. And so I mean, we kind of the conclusion, because I was working for her and as I started this business, that it was time to lay me off uh, as well, because we needed to make sure that she could stay her practice. So it is a big deal. It's not a figment of someone's imagination, and I do believe that you, as our city manager, city leadership, is going to definitely have their hands full, and your critical thinking skills are going to absolutely have to be razor sharp.
Yeah.
So, what what kind of conversations are you having with the staff, or the city leadership having with you, meaning mayor, city council? Is there anything you can share with us about the kinds of conversation, potential planning that's taking place for the best of conditions or for the worst of conditions?
My conversations with the staff have been kind of twofold. I talk to the department directors, and then every weekly, and now I'm transitioned to every other week, but I've had a weekly inforum with our city staff where they can log online and we just connect online and talk about, sometimes I'll have a speaker come, sometimes it's just topical, but the real purpose is for us to be able to just have some sort of connection back with the city as they're out away, or maybe they're out working in the field. Just a way for me to get to know people without being able to go see them physically. So that was another workaround that we've been doing. um, my message to employees is kind of twofold. One, I really want people to practice good self-care, and what I mean by that is there are so many stressors coming at us. In addition to them doing their jobs in a different setting, in a different way, um, there's the stressors of hearing things on the news. There's the stressors of family situations. There's the overall uncertainty that clouds us every day.
Mhm.
So I really want them to take care of their whole self, not just the self that they bring to the job, but be mindful of how they're feeling physically. Go out, get fresh air, try to get some exercise. Do something that feeds their spirit. If that's singing, playing the piano, doing art, something that feeds them on the inside. Um, and really paying attention to their mental health and their physical health is important, because this is going to be a long-term process. This is taking longer than any of us anticipated.
Mhm.
You and I were talking about that earlier, just what our expectations were when things started closing down in March. I certainly thought we would be much further along today than we are now.
Mhm.
So this is a tricky and resilient virus, and so we have to be more resilient ourselves.
Mhm.
So that's my first communication, and the second is, we have a responsibility to do the best that we can for the residents of Springfield, to give them the services that they need. And maybe it's a different way, and maybe it's not the preferred way, or the way that people have been accustomed to interacting with the city. But I think that we're learning, and we're developing greater skills that will probably transcend beyond this pandemic. I really think that, I'll use the development center as an example. They're having the ability for people to submit permits online.
Mhm.
That's great. That's something that I think we should continue as an augmented service, and not just shut that down after we fully reopen. So ways that we can make things more convenient for people, I'm all for that. So my message has been twofold: practice good self-care, do your job the best that you can, and practice great customer service.
What's it been like trying to pull city council meetings together on the fly via Zoom and all these new challenges?
Well, I think it's been, much like what everybody else has been experiencing with Zoom. It's a little clunky. Um, We use GoToMeeting for our meeting format, but it's similar, online platform. I think the council has missed having there's so much interaction you lose when you're online. We don't get to read each other's body language. We don't have that energy in the room that comes from thinking together and working together on a process or a topic. So I think that, that's been, and then there's just the logistical things. People, their audio isn't working, or maybe, everybody forgets to unmute themselves when they talk. I still do that myself, and it's been how many months now,
Mm-hmm.
So, it's not the best way, but I will say it has one positive, and I think that it's enabled more community members to be able to tune into the council meetings, and that's been a convenience for them. They don't have to come down to City Hall. They can be at home. They can submit questions through the chat feature. So there are some functions with the online meetings that I think have been very positive. And so I was thinking about how can we get the council back together physically, and one, stay safe,
Mm-hmm.
but two, not lose some of the conveniences that we've had with some of these online formats as well. So we're kind of noodling through that now.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of different types of formats, and we wanted to go Facebook Live with this interview, and it wouldn't start for whatever reason. So anything can happen on any given day. Uh, how are you managing? We've had several protests now here in the city of Springfield. How are the leaders managing to communicate lessons learned, realizations, some of this struggle in the midst of limited meeting capacity? How do you think that's going?
It's been difficult. It has been difficult, but I think that the mayor and the council have been very, they're always very open to working with the community, and and especially I know they get a ton of emails, they get a lot of phone calls, so they have a lot of direct communication with our community members. But I'll give a couple examples. So the mayor recently had a couple of conversation projects with the chief. She had a couple meetings with some of our downtown business owners to talk about the protests, and hear from the chief about how the police approach these protests, what they do to try to keep the protesters safe and the people that are in the community safe, how that works, what the different philosophies are on policing with that. And I think it's important to realize that, this is new for us
Hmm.
as a city. The police are learning just as we are
Yes.
on how to deal with these protests. I think they've done a really great job in learning and adapting and really trying to create a space for people to demonstrate and air their feelings and their grievances and their pain and all of those things, and yet at the same time try to keep things safe in the community and let people feel safe in their own community. So it's a tricky balance because people obviously have the right to do that, and we support that right, absolutely. And I think that the message that they're trying to convey is an important one that we all should be paying attention and listening to. At the same time, people have the right to be in their community and feel safe as well. So um, I'll give you an example. We had, one of the issues that came up during one of the protests was that some of the people that were demonstrated wanted to go onto Main Street. Main Street is an ODOT highway.
Hmm.
It's been proven to be very dangerous for pedestrians, and so the police weren't going to allow them to march there because it was a public safety issue. But it became, in the heightened tension of the moment, it became the police aren't letting us go where we're going to go. They're going to hold the line. They're going to, um, and that's unfortunate. I think, when people's emotions are heated, it's hard to listen to the logical reason behind why we might be doing something, which has nothing to do with the protest or people. It's just keeping people out of a highway, not, we're not supporting the protest or the people's right to demonstrate. So, I guess in the message that I would give to people that want to do that is just to be mindful that we really do try to balance the best, all the best needs that we have, as far as keeping people safe. And so we're trying to protect the community. And I know the people demonstrating that may not believe that, but we're trying to protect them too.
Mhm.
I don't want to see anybody get hurt in these protests from any aspect of the way that they are interacting.
Well, I appreciate your observations because you're right. It There are heightened tensions for all of us because this is new to all of us, and we are all learning in this process. I mean, I had a meltdown honestly when we went online school at home. The governor announced no more school. Then that afternoon, I got this long email from the school director about all our responsibilities, and I immediately emailed back. I was just lost in the moment, and I said to them, "Yeah, so what if I don't do it?
Yeah,
What if I don't do what you're asking me to do? I don't see this as my problem. It's your problem. I'm not a licensed teacher. You are. I don't know where you're at in all these classes and the curriculum and all these things you're telling me I have to do now. So I understand that, that sense of heightened the stress, the tension, and it's in every segment of society in our communities right now.
it definitely is.
Hmm. So, what are you doing to encourage yourself?
I'm coming to work at City Hall every day and getting to know people, and that in itself has been wonderfully encouraging. But and also, it's been great having being closer to my family. The irony is, moving back to Oregon to be close to my family and then not being able to see them because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
So that hasn't been lost on me, but it's been wonderful to be able to see them safely. My sister, we've she lives in Washington, and so we've met kind of halfway. We've gotten drive through at Panera and sat in our cars and kind of pulled our cars up next to each other and had lunch together in our socially distant way. So it's just wonderful to connect with family and friends. And in exploring Springfield, that's been a lot of fun as well. My husband and I have been out doing some hikes and taking our dog with us, and so it's a beautiful area. So that's another way that we can really just kind of connect and recharge.
What would you say? What message would you give to the citizens? You're not just hired by the city council to facilitate their policy. You're clearly a representative to us as well.
Yeah.
What would you say to the citizens regarding your commitment to ensure that the city continues to function well in the midst of this pandemic and the other difficulties we're facing?
That's a heavy question. I would say my commitment is that myself and the rest of the staff, we are ever mindful that we are to be good stewards of the public's resources and the public's trust. And I take that very seriously. I, I, that's something that we earn every day when we come to work, and we do the best we can for the citizens and for the council, for everybody here in Springfield. Um, you know, I can assure you that our decisions are based on, the highest moral standard, the highest legal standard, the the highest standard of integrity that we can do. And in Springfield, we look at how we can get things done with limited resources, limited staffing. We're small but mighty,
Mhm.
and I think that's that kind of can-do spirit is something that we bring every day. Um, but beyond that, because there's the service that we provide, but then it's also our mentality toward the people that we serve. Um, my commitment is, however you reach out to me, you're going to be treated with respect and with dignity and kindness. That's something that my mom instilled in me from a very young age. And I know it sounds really corny, but I think, it costs you nothing to be kind to people.
Mhm.
It costs you nothing to be courteous to people. And yet the impact that you can have on them by just showing them some kindness in the day, it can be really transformative.
Mhm.
That's something that I really believe in and practice every day.
If a citizen, once people see this and they want to reach out to you, is it possible for them to contact you? And if so, how would they do that?
Absolutely, they can contact me. I think the probably the easiest way is through email, because that's something I'm on and checking probably more than I should. um, and and also just voicemail. They can, I mean, they can call me as well on the city's main line. But my email address is nnewton, Newton, at springfield-or.gov.
And they can probably also find you on the city website.
They can. They absolutely can.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had the distinct pleasure this morning of speaking with the new city manager of Springfield, Oregon, Nancy Newton. What a compelling life story. And just from today and what I've come to know already, we're very fortunate to have you, Nancy. Thank you for applying and not only allowing our leadership to choose you, but thank you for choosing the city as well and all that that implies. We bid you all the success that you hope to have as our city manager, for your staff, for those you're responsible for and responsible to. And we'll look forward to many opportunities to engage with you in the future and finding out how the things we can do to help you be successful as well.
Thank you, Mark. I just wanted to say I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. And I'm thrilled to be here in Springfield. And if I do see you out in public and if you recognize me, come say hi, introduce yourself to me. I'd love to meet you.
As long as we're 6 feet away.
Good enough.
Very good. Thank you for your time. You have a very good day, Nancy.
All right, you too. Thanks, Mark.
Yes, ma'am. Bye bye.